The NHL playoffs are upon us. Welcome to WagerTalk TV. I am Kelly Stewart, joined today by the two guys from Puck Time. That's right, Andrew McGinnis and Carmine Bianco, both of WagerTalk.com. All right, guys, we're going to get into these first rounds here, but let's talk about my home state. There has been a crazy series of events here in the state of Florida, where now all of a sudden both teams get to play each other. You guys asked me before we came on if I was going to buy tickets. I don't know if I could afford to buy tickets. This series is going to be absolutely electric. I know Lightning fans just north of me are excited. Panther fans just south of me are a little arrogant after last year's playoff run. Carmine, I'm going to go to you first. Tell me how you think the series is going to play out.
Yeah, we didn't think we were going to be here. It looked like it was going to be Boston versus Tampa Bay. It looked like it was going to be Florida versus Toronto, but the Bruins somehow lose their final two games of the season in Washington, then at home to Ottawa, which I posted on the X about them tanking and putting up the picture of a tank during the first period, because clearly they were trying to finish second in the division and play the Toronto Maple Leafs, who they've owned in the playoffs. But we'll talk about that one later on. This one, some quick talking points on this one, and then we'll see what Andrew has to say on this one. You look at defense. Defense, obviously, the edge goes to Florida in this one. They've only allowed 2.41 goals per game. That's 2.56 at home and 217 or 227 on the road. Their last 7 games heading into the playoffs, they were 5-1-1 and allowed 1.71 goals per game. So clearly I think they are the better defensive team. But when you look at scoring and you're still going to need to score goals, it is Tampa Bay. They've got all that experience in that lineup. They've got the number one power play, 28.6% power play efficiency this season, scoring 3.51 goals per game overall, which is second best total in the Eastern Conference this year as far as scoring goes. And then you want to look at the final one, which is experience. Yes, the Florida Panthers made it to the Stanley Cup, a fantastic run for them last season, upsetting the Bruins, beating the Leafs, and eventually getting there, only to lose to the Vegas Golden Knights. So, yeah, they got the experience, but you can't match the experience of Tampa Bay. 2 Stanley Cup wins. They follow up with another Stanley Cup Finals appearance. This team has been there. They're extremely well coached, and you're getting plus money on them, plus 145 in a series where travel won't even be a factor because this is being played in the state of Florida. I'm going to go with the team with the experience. I'm going to go with the team with, I think, the better offense, because if we get any power plays in this series, Tampa is going to dominate it. And if they can get out and steal game one of this series, and 6 of 8 teams last year on the road in game one won game one. 6 of 8 road teams last year won game one. I think Tampa does that here as well too. They go into Florida game one and win it, and I think they go on to win the series. I'm going to take the plus money with the Lightning here.
Carm is speaking my language, Andrew. We know I love the plus money. As somebody who has been to both arenas, I'll give the very small nod to Tampa having a better home ice advantage. But you said you're going to be a chalk-eating weasel here. Plead your case for the Florida Panthers.
Look, I know. See, I'm not being a chalk-eating weasel as far as the favorite's concerned here, Kelly. I'm just playing it a little bit safer. So Carm's just making me look like less of a man here, as I'm on the plus 1.5 games for Tampa Bay. It's minus 145. I understand it isn't as nice of a price as it is to take them to win the series, but I think that at the very least, this series goes 6 games, or I think that they win it in 6, or if it goes to 7, you win the bet, or if they lose in 7, you still win the bet. To me, when I look at this, it's very unfortunate for the Florida Panthers to have had the season that they had, to make the pickups at the trade deadline that they did, and then wait, this is the team they have to play. What's probably the closest team to a dynasty we've seen in the last 5 or 6 years, a team that's been in the Stanley Cup Finals so many times. And let's not forget, we've got one team that went to the Stanley Cup last year, one team that got bounced in the first round of the playoffs last year, guys. We talked about it all year on Puck Time, especially Carmine mentioning this. This Tampa Bay team does not care about the regular season. All they cared about was getting into the postseason, get in and see what happens. They built a good roster. They picked up Matt Dumba, a nice defenseman, very aggressive, good player, a veteran guy. They also picked up Anthony Duclair at the trade deadline. When it comes to the Florida Panthers, I'm not calling them phonies by any means, because they have made a really good impression on everybody over the last few years, that big run that they had. I think they're a bit top heavy. Even though they made some changes at the deadline, I think that if their top 3 or 4 players don't perform, there's nobody really behind them. Whereas I actually am more confident about the depth of the Tampa Bay Lightning. And one thing to look out for here, both teams are very aggressive. Both teams love to cross-check, love to talk smack, love to get into it. The Florida Panthers were the most penalized team in the entire National Hockey League. And that means you're going to put Kucherov, who's an MVP candidate, Stamkos and those guys on the power play. To me, it's a recipe for success for Tampa Bay. If they can stay out of the box and execute when they're on the power play, I believe they get the job done. But I'm not as confident as Carm, so I'm going to stick with the +1.5. And I do have one bet that I did like, and it actually is on the Florida Panthers side. And I talk about how top heavy they are, and with them being so top heavy, I'm going to take Sam Reinhart to have at least 1 2-goal game during the series. That's even money. This guy broke his record for the most goals he scored in a season by about 20 goals this season. He had an unreal year. +100 for Reinhart to have at least 1 game with 2 goals.
All right, Andrew and Carm in agreement on the Florida games, we'll call it. But next up, we've got the Islanders, Hurricanes. Andrew, I'm going to kick this one back to you. You like the home team here to win game 1 and the series.
I do like the home team here in this one. And, with them being such big favorites, Kelly, you can find a good way to get value here and a good odds here with the Carolina Hurricanes to win game 1 and the series -135. They're laying, $3 to win the whole series. To me, this is a matchup where it's anything you can do, I can do better. And I love the fact that Carolina gets the home ice advantage. They've been so great at home throughout the playoffs over the last few years. But as far as the matchup's concerned, goals per game, Carolina ranks 8th. We have New York Islanders ranking 22nd. Shots on goal, Carolina ranks number 3. Islanders rank 19th. As far as defensive ratings, shots on goal allowed, the Carolina Hurricanes are the number 1 team in that category. When it comes down to it, we have 2 teams that rely on defense, that rely on goaltending. But I believe the Carolina Hurricanes are just a little bit better in those categories. And the big thing in this matchup to me, I keep referencing the trade deadline. This is a Carolina Hurricanes team that's been almost there. They've been on the brink over the last few years of taking that next step in the postseason. They finally made a splash at the deadline. Jake Gensel gets picked up at the deadline from the Pittsburgh Penguins. He has been the missing piece, that one offensive weapon that they've needed. I believe he is a huge part of the success for the Hurricanes. And also Frederik Andersen. He was dealing with blood clotting, a lot of health issues. He was out for a majority of the year. And boy, oh boy, has he looked good since he came back. An unbelievable record, a great goals against average. And that's why I've locked in a bet for him to have at least 1 game with 40 saves. And, you throw in 1 overtime and you cash that. You throw in, and, keep in mind, there's no 5-minute overtime, no 3-on-3. It's 5-on-5 overtime. I believe Andersen has a huge part of this. You can get 40+ saves, 45+ saves. To me, the goaltending, the defense, and the game breakers, all of that goes to the Carolina Hurricanes.
Ooh, Hurricanes -135 to win game 1 and the series. Frederik Andersen to record 40+ saves in any game, +190. Thank you to Andrew for reminding us, because I forgot it last year. The overtime rules do change in the NHL playoffs. Carmine, we're going to talk about your favorite team, the Maple Leafs, +105 versus the Boston Bruins. I was a little shocked to see you on the Leafs here.
I know you mean that sarcastically, Kelly. I'm not a Leafs fan, and I'm hard on them. Living in Toronto or just north of it each and every year, because the fan base is one that can drive you nuts, as do my friends who are all Leaf fans. But this is one of those ones where it's kind of like, be careful what you wish for. Last season, the Leafs beat Tampa Bay in the opening round, and their fan base went absolutely wild. The first first time winning a first round series in 18 years. You have to go back to 2004, I think it is, the last time they won a first round series in a place that's supposed to be hockey town. And all the chanting was, "We want Florida, we want Florida." Well, they got Florida, and they also got bounced from the playoffs. This year, it's a little different. It was the Boston Bruins who, as we discussed previously, who I think pretty much it's tough to tank, but it's what they did in the last couple of games of the season. They lose both in Washington and then home to Ottawa, a team that had packed it in already. And Boston was just didn't show up in that one, lose at home, which meant that the Florida Panthers took over top spot in the Atlantic, and the Bruins, instead of playing Tampa Bay in the first round, which was a bad matchup for them, end up getting the Toronto Maple Leafs, who they beat four times this season, a couple 4-1 results, and then a couple games that went into overtime earlier in the season. And also a team that this is their fourth meeting in 11 years in the playoffs. Boston's won the three previous series, all going to Game 7, all at TD Boston Garden. But I think the scenario here is a little different, and I'm going to talk about it. Pressure, obviously, on the Bruins. They win the President's Trophy last year after a great season, and they get bounced in the first round against Florida. The year prior to that, they get bounced in the first round. So playoff success hasn't been with them as much as most people would believe. 2019, I think, is the last time they won a first round series. Pressure on the Leafs. Well, they get their first series win last season against Tampa Bay. They ultimately lose to Florida in what was a bad matchup for them. Florida was much better, and a lot of depth throughout that lineup. And now you look at it. So how do they stack up in this series? Talent, talent and offense. You got to give the edge to Toronto. They're better down the middle. No disrespect to guys like Pavel Zacha and Coyle, but in a 7-game series, the Leafs center and their depth through the middle is much better than Boston's. Defense and goaltending, you got to give the edge to Boston. Boston, always a very tough team defensively, and their goalies, Allmark and Swayman. It's likely going to be Swayman that starts. You got to give the edge to them over Wall and Samsonov. But here's the thing: is Samsonov, since coming back in July after a stint down in the minors, and he didn't really play a game in the minors, but after struggling, he just went down, did some work with a goaltending coach. He came back up 18-4-2 with a 2.69 goals against average and a 905 save percentage. That's just as good as any of the Bruins goalies, and he's going to be their guy. He's going to be their game one starter. So maybe that edge in goaltending just shrunk a little bit. If the Leafs can keep them to 3 goals or less, I think their scoring will more than compensate in it. So I think you look at this one, and a lot of people want to sort of look at the Leafs and say each and every year they get to the playoffs and they struggle. The last couple of games, they get blown out. Their last couple of games in Florida and Tampa Bay was all about getting Austin Matthews to 70 goals off of that number 69. They didn't get it done. The focus now shifts to being a team. And from a coaching perspective, this is where Toronto kind of fails, because Montgomery is a very good coach for Boston. Sheldon Keefe remains to be seen what he can do, but the least he can do is bulletin board the fact that the Boston Bruins tanked to play the Leafs and use that to fuel this team. And I think we're going to see a different Toronto team in the first round of the playoffs. I think Austin Matthews can easily go off on the Bruins, and if they do, the Leafs are going to win this series. So the Leafs plus 105 to win this series, and I think this series ends in 6 games. And you can take the series to last exactly 6 games, plus 200. That's available at DK, and is another good bet. I don't think this goes to 7 like the previous 3 meetings between these two in the last 11 years have gone.
All right, good stuff there from Carm. Again, a team he is actually very unbiased against. Going to take the team that he is so hard on. Andrew, a team that I was really hard on because they were my first hockey team, the Colorado Avalanche, take on the Winnipeg Jets. Jets kind of surprising a lot of people this year, at least recreational hockey fans such as myself. Tell me why you like the Jets to win this series.
Yeah, the common theme here, Kel, with plus money in the NHL. You never know what's going to happen, and you can tell Carmine and myself, we love the plus money. I'm going to take a look at this Winnipeg Jets team, and for a lot of reasons, but the number one reason is actually getting the home ice advantage. Down the stretch, it was really important for them to have success, to gather some wins up, and be able to get home ice. Looking at the Colorado Avalanche, they were so dominant at home, 39-1 at home. But on the road, 19-6-6. They weren't nearly as impressive. Their defensive numbers on the road were horrible, and they just were not the same team on the road. A big part of that, for people out there that might not know, again, I'll mention, you don't get the matchup of your choice on the road, meaning you don't get the last change. And it's huge in hockey, especially in the playoffs, for the home coach to be able to decide which players he wants going up against certain players for the other team. And in the goaltending perspective, I think that it's a clear edge for Connor Hellebuyck and the Winnipeg Jets compared to Georgiev and the crew in Colorado with the Avalanche. Their defensive numbers and their goaltending has not been the same. And then I'll talk about depth, because depth to me is one of the most important factors in playoff handicapping. When you talk about superstars, sure, Colorado has the edge. But when I look past those 3 or 4 top guys, I don't see as many guys that are going to be able to impact the game. When I look at Winnipeg, I see guys like Sean Monahan, a veteran player picked up at the trade deadline. Tyler Toffoli, a veteran player picked up at the trade deadline. Then you have guys like Mark Scheifele and the entire forward group there that just have been there, done that, and they can execute in playoff style games. When it comes to defense, when it comes to goaltending, and when it comes to getting home ice advantage, I truly do believe Winnipeg is the team to get the job done in this series. They're small underdogs here. I like them quite a bit. And obviously, I keep mentioning goaltending being huge. I'll go back to a goaltender prop. This time, we got 45 plus saves, and that price here with Hellebuyck is a good price, around plus 190 to plus 200 as well. So looking at that, we're going to rock with Hellebuyck, and I think that with these save props, you get 1 or 2 overtimes in the series, which I certainly believe we'll get, and you're laughing right to the bank with these save props over 40, 45 saves. I'll take that.
I like both of those as well. Those are always fun, right? Again, we love the plus money here at WagerTalk. Carmine and Andrew do such a great job all year long on Puck Time. So make sure you guys are subscribed to the WagerTalk YouTube channel. Check out all of their videos. We'll be back for, probably round 2 of the playoffs, but let's finish up round 1 strong. Carmine, Washington Capitals, $3 favorites at the New York Rangers. I will say this. I bought a Ryan Reeves jersey when I went to MSG and kind of really enjoyed that style of hockey that the New York Rangers like to play, but they've really disappointed me ever since. Now they're minus 450 to win the series. Is that more of an indication on how good the Rangers are, or how much the Capitals are really not that good?
Cal, yeah, it's plus 340 on Washington. It's about right. They could be higher because the Rangers have been far and above one of the best teams this season in the NHL. They win the President's Trophy, and now there's a stigma that comes with winning the President's Trophy, that teams that win the President's Trophy don't win the Stanley Cup. You have to go back to, I think, the 2012-2013 season when the Chicago Blackhawks did it. And no other team has gone on to win the Stanley Cup after winning the President's Trophy. Boston finished last season a remarkable record, 130 plus points, I think they had, and they get bounced in the first round. I think the Rangers are built differently. They can make a cup run, and they're likely going to make a cup run. I don't see Washington really standing in their way. You look at some talking points, and it's like, is the tank empty for this Washington team? For the last 3.5 weeks, they've been playing pretty much playoff hockey, trying to get into the playoffs. And that's a little different than what Florida did last season, because Florida had depth throughout their lineup. Washington doesn't. And you even looked down through the centers on this team, and obviously the centers for, and I'm going to talk about them in a second, centers for the Rangers are absolutely unbelievable. It's more about the fact that I think they've just expended so much energy to get into the playoffs that you finally make it in, and I think you just drop off. And that's what I'm expecting them to drop off. Now, I'm not going to give you a minus 450 winner on the show. I'm going to tell you how to play this, but you look at it. Charlie Lindgren, the goalie for Washington, he's played 34 of the last 43 games. And there was a drop-off on him towards the end. They've overworked the guy, and I think the Rangers are going to get a lot of shots on goal. This is one of the ones where I envision it's going to be a sweep or it's going to go in 5 games. You look at playoff experience, edge goes to the Rangers. You look at goaltending, edge goes to the Rangers. Give me Shesterkin any day of the week over Lindgren, much better goalie. You look at the center depth, obviously edge to the Rangers, Zibanejad, Trocheck, Goodrow, Weinberg. Throughout that lineup, the first 4 lines, better centers, and that's an indication of depth on a team. Speed, same thing. Rangers have team speed. If they can get Washington out of that defensive structure that they used in the last 2 or 3 weeks to grind out these 2-1 wins, these 3-1 wins, get them out of that defensive structure, get on them early, get them to open up. This series is going to be over, and it's going to be over in 4 or 5 games. You look at the series is going to go to the Rangers. They're not going to get upset in this one. You look at the spread. You can take the Rangers minus 2.5 games at plus 115. That means that if the Rangers win in 5 or less, 4 or 5 games, you cash a plus money ticket on the Rangers. If you think it might go 6 and not go 7, you could take the Rangers minus 1.5, but you're going to have to lay that chalk. It's minus 190 on the minus 1.5 games. So I think the minus 2.5 games on the Rangers, I don't see this going past 5 games. I think the Rangers win both at home, head to Washington, either win both there or at least one of the two and clinch it game 5 at home and put the series to rest. So that minus 2.5 plus 115, I think is a good way to go. And one prop bet I'm going to take from Andrew, who loves doing these prop bets, Artemi Panarin. You can take him to get 10 plus points in this series, and he's a big part of this team. He is on a 13-game point streak where he has scored 26 points. He's averaging basically 2 points a game. You can take him for 10 or more points at plus 115, and that's available at DK as well, too. And that's my take on the Rangers and the Washington Capitals.
All right, chalk eaten to finish the show. Just kidding. Lots of plus money given out by the Puck Time crew at Carmine Bianco WT, at McInnes Picks, both on social media where you like to catch them. All right, guys, we are going to cash some tickets in round 1. We'll plan on being back here for round 2. In the end term, let's make some money and see if we can't find some more plus money in the upcoming weeks on the ice.